Hello and welcome to episode 37 of the Sean McGuinness podcast. It's only taken us that long to go and get some professional music. Thank you, Daniel Stritch. I am your host. Yes, you guessed it, Sean McGuinness. Now, in today's episode, we sit down in person with Mark Roper. Now, Mark is a coach, functional nutrition consultant, and educator. Mark works primarily with high execs and whoever else can afford his expensive but brilliant services in London CBD. Luckily, he's over here for the moment, so we got to sit down face to face and have a chat. Now, we talk a lot about the challenges and roadblocks his busy clients face in regards health, stress, sleep, food choices, training, how this approach may differ slightly from what is out there, from what your general maybe population approach to fat loss is. We talk cardiovascular training, mistakes we've made in the past, and there's so many nuggets in here that you can apply to your own health fat loss regime today to improve your life. Trust me. And Mark is actually a bit of banter, which makes one of us in this conversation. So a lot of the people that message me say they listen to this on their walk and when they're getting their steps in, when they're getting their cardio in. So hopefully you're doing the same. Or maybe you're back, you can come and you can chill out and listen to this. So get the notepad out and I will see you all on the other side. Okay, welcome to episode 37 of the Sean McGuinness podcast. Today we have a special guest in person, which is good post-COVID, Mark Roper. Now, Mark, I always start usually with the question, what research or what have you been dipping your head in lately? I know you're busy over here in Sydney, but has there anything in particular you've been looking at?
Well, I have to say, the first few weeks I've been here, I've been kind of reunited with my family after a period of time of being in London, so it's kind of been a little bit of downtime and chilling. But the past few weeks I've been delving back into a lot of Brian Walsh's work on the website Metabolic Fitness Pro, which has some serious in-depth information on physiology, cell health, everything like that. So it's a bit of a minefield, but it's been great getting back into that.
Yeah, Brian Walsh is a genius, isn't he?
He is, man.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, you can listen to him talk all day long. I've referred friends of mine to come to his seminars, and some of them are just like straight over the head, but some great content.
So obviously you work with execs in London.
Yeah.
Is it fat loss? Is it health? Is it body transformations? What way do you deal with people?
Yeah, so it's always been gearing towards health. Obviously, the average person that's coming in is generally looking for fat loss or looking for weight loss. I would say probably 80% of my clients, it's not necessarily weight loss is the issue, but it's more becoming healthier. And I know you've talked about this with other guys in the podcast before, but stressed execs are some of the least healthy people you'll come across in London, particularly. Crazy hours of work, and I train lawyers predominantly, and lawyers have some serious work ethic. They're grafting, there's no breakfast, there's minimal lunch, and then there's the biggest meal out you've ever seen at night time with copious amounts of wine. Wine. They don't sleep well, they get up, and they just burn out. So for me, it's always been trying to look at the health aspect of them. Yeah,
and that's what I actually wanted to get on, because I think in today's world, it's something you can't really quantify, but like if you're using social media or something, but when you see the impact, when you sort someone sleep out and all these issues actually has in the quality of their life, it's not sexy online, but like to that person, that's absolute life changes, isn't it?
Totally. And I would say pretty much every guy that's come in to see me, because I used to have probably a 50-50 split of females to males, but because I kind of almost adopted this one law firm, and lawyers tend to generally just refer. They seem to love it more than anything. So they've all kind of referred and bought sessions for each other to train with me. And so it's become a bit of an in-house referral system. And these guys, every single one of them, they don't necessarily know it at first, but how run down or dead they are, until you then maybe change something within the diet or change the sleep patterns or improve the sleep patterns, and then they're just like a different person, and it's their ability to then continue doing whatever that is, which I tend to find a lot of lawyers tend to be ex-sportsmen, maybe ex-rugby players, or who've certainly played sport to a decent level.
So you can actually build a business not on social media, is that what you're saying?
I mean, I am absolutely shocking on social media, so you definitely can. And mine's been a very, although it sounds slightly cheesy, but an organically built business. And you know, I use social media for a bit of a laugh and to keep in contact with people, but should probably do a lot more on it. Obviously, you're far more savvy on social media than I am, but it's, you know, at the end of the day, none of my clients are on Instagram. Not one of them. You know, my average client, the age is 50 to 55. They have no interest in Instagram. However, I do seminars and retreats and stuff like that. So to build that side of things, that's, you probably need to be on social media. But I've always been able to have such a pool of clients that to continue to do also 3 aspects.
No, that's the way it should be. People obviously selling marketing courses, but you probably come from the same schools where you just get good at your craft first, and everything will take care of itself.
Definitely. I mean, you know, there's things I can definitely improve on in certain business aspects and everything like that. And I'm obviously constantly trying to develop as a trainer. But yeah, I think getting good at your craft, being in the trenches, doing the dirty work in the first place, being on the gym floor, that's, in my opinion, that's where you learn most of the stuff. If I think back to being a trainer in the first place, some of the exercises that I do straight off there, I do my diploma in personal training with Premier, you know, like doing like sort of lateral raises with the band, everything was with the band on a bow too and stuff like that, you know, just because it seemed kind of cool at the time. But you know, that's where I made my mistakes and learned from them.
No, it's a bit unfair to just let you out to the wild straight off the bat, but again, you're constantly educating yourself and upskilling. So for the listener, maybe describe the lifestyle of a normal client for you, and then maybe how you deal with it.
Yeah. Okay. So an average client of mine, like I say, he's probably working. Well, they are probably working 50 to 70 hours a week. They tend to be doing high-end cases, which involve a lot of stress, a lot of serious money involved, and they all tend to be the equity partners of the firm. So, you know, they're dealing with a lot of people underneath them. So obviously, most of them tend to have families, kids, and everything like that. So no different to most people, but they're up early in the morning. A lot of them tend to live outside of London, so they have a long commute into work. So if you have 3 hours of your day already commuting, that's a large thing of your day taken already. And then straight from there, meetings, and they're basically just on all day long. And this is the thing: can you be on all day long? Most people can, but it's the effect of them, what happens when you get home, etc. So these guys are in the work environment all day long, dealing with stressful situations. Number one thing they don't do is they don't look after the nutrition. You know, nutrition is minimal, or grabbing whatever they can get. Prep tends to keep lawyers running, and Prep is a fairly terrible sandwich-based company in London, which is about 1 million of them.
I think because it just has the calories on it, everyone thinks it's good, isn't it?
Exactly. You know, like the salads have like 2 litres of salad in it. So these guys are you could say they're malnourished to a certain extent. They're certainly not taking in any minerals or micronutrients. Way too much coffee, huge influx of calories in the evening, with, again, as I said earlier on, a serious amount of alcohol. So these guys are constantly socialising. That's what they have to do as a business, constantly socialising, constantly referring. So they don't tend to have that off switch. Getting home, commuting back, family life, go again, and that's, you know, 6 days a week generally.
Yeah. So an interesting point I've heard you talk about before, and I mentioned it last week, when it comes to breakfast, but people think you automatically have to have like a certain group of foods for breakfast. Yeah. And people always ask, breakfast ideas. Yeah. So what common breakfast do your executives eat, and kind of what way do you lean them towards, and for what reason?
I mean, I picked this up from Charles Poliquin many years ago, so I've always gone down this sort of animal protein and healthy fats-based breakfast. Now, obviously, certain people can get away with having large amounts of carbohydrates for breakfast, you know, particularly people that train more regularly, people that are very tolerant to carbohydrates, triathletes, etc. But for your average Joe, you want to be having an animal protein-based breakfast, so that could be eggs, meat, fish, with some sort of healthy fats, your avocados, nuts, seeds, oils like coconut, olive oil of the world. And the reason for that is that you're trying to balance your blood sugar levels early in the morning. Well, slightly raise your blood sugar levels, but to sustain them. But also as well, when you have a high influx of carbohydrates first thing in the morning, you tend to get a suppression of your cortisol. So it tends to relax you a little bit more, while generally you want your cortisol to be high in the morning, so you're good to go. So that's the first dietary change that I make with all clients, is to have a breakfast, because most of them will have a black coffee or a pint of latte, do you know what I mean? Or they'll have the cereal or a toast or a glass of orange juice, the kind of common things that people tend to associate with breakfast.
And what's the usual reaction, or how do you maybe slowly change that over time?
I mean, some people particularly certain things like fish. If you say, I'll give things like smoked salmon or like things like mackerel as an option. Certain people, they love that straight off, no problem. Certain people think I'm like absolutely crazy if I recommend some like a red meat for breakfast, like a steak. Again, some people are like, wow, I can have steak for breakfast. Or again, for me, it's completely polarized. You either get execs who love it and they're almost like robots and they'll just do whatever they say, or they've got no idea, like they're almost disgusted by the idea. So with those guys, I always try and relate to the fact that they'll say that they don't want to have meat for breakfast, and you tend to find, I don't want to generalize, but you tend to find that a little bit more with females, but they have meat for breakfast because I always ask them, have you had a fry-up before? People seem to forget that bacon and sausage is actually meat, or people have eggs all the time, and obviously eggs, avocado here is such a common thing. So I just tend to ask them to try it. Obviously, ask them what would they be most likely to enjoy, because I don't want somebody to eat something that they're not going to enjoy because they're just not going to stick to it. Always give 3 to 4 options, because I like people to have rotation in the breakfast, and ideally three different options throughout the week. Try them, see how they feel with it, and they have to do it for 14 days and to see how they feel. And pretty much every single one of them will, on the calipers, the skin folds, they'll tend to always drop. Again, usual things, they'll have higher energy, they'll have better motivation in the morning, better mental clarity. So it's more of a try it for me, see how you go, and then very few people come back and say they didn't enjoy it or they didn't feel better from it.
Yeah, and you can obviously explain to people that the feeling they get after a big carb meal, carb coma, it's obviously not what you want, especially in the morning. And anyone that sticks to a high protein, high fat, their cravings are going to be low. They probably won't eat for hours after a lot of the time. Like they would never get that mid-morning snack.
No, exactly, and that's the thing, as soon as that's a good point. As soon as you say the carb coma thing, people resonate with, and like, yeah, all right, okay, I understand that. I've definitely had that before, because people tend to get that at lunch all the time. Again, people will choose a pasta dish or sandwich or something like that and have that sort of mid-afternoon slump. But yeah, in my opinion, for most people, it's quite hard to overeat on avocado and eggs and chicken or whatever like that. Most people are not going to have an 8-egg omelette with a whole avocado. They're just not. They're not going to be able to consume it. Obviously, if they did, they're going to put on body fat. That's the way it is. However, if the average person's taking on 3 or 4 eggs with half an avocado, they're going to feel fairly satiated until lunchtime.
And this obviously relays back into the point that on social media, I think it's easy just to say, okay, here's your calories, here's blah 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 blah, track your calories, because it's probably just general information you can give to a lot of people. Yeah. Or we probably both have clients where you just increase the food quality and then naturally just decrease the calorie content. Yeah. So for these people who are working on big cases, and it's not an excuse they don't have time to track the calories, they may just not be into it. Yeah. They'd probably rather just increase the food quality, is that right?
Yeah, totally. So yes, I always try and get a food diary of every client just to have an idea of where they're at, and that's one thing you need to do with your clients. You need to have an idea of exactly where they're at, whether that is a precise food diary going through something like a MyFitnessPal, or whether it's just written down. Obviously, you're hoping that the client's going to be honest with you, but you generally know. But for my clients, if I'm honest, I don't even remember the last time I had a client to count calories. With them, it's actually just trying to shift when the timing of the food, or when they're taking in the calories, because as I kind of repeat myself, for most of my guys, it is a huge surge in the evening and it's minimal throughout the day. And the ones that, or the morning and the afternoon, and the calories that they are having then tend to be much more of a sugar-based or low nutrient quality, as you were saying there. And if you do that, if you're having all of your calories in the evening, more than likely you're going to have trouble sleeping. Particularly if you take on a lot of alcohol, you're going to wake up unrested, you're going to have fatigue. So just that shift alone of reducing calories in the evening meal, put them in the breakfast and lunch, for me, tends to work wonders.
Yeah, and it's a good point, because obviously intermittent fasting is a popular topic and can work with if someone's in a healthy state, whatever, where the metabolism is pretty flexible. What are some of the issues you probably see when, say, an overweight person with blood sugar issues skips breakfast?
Yeah. So I think you talked about this with Owen on the podcast, and intermittent fasting is phenomenal and can work very, very well. I love it, I utilize it myself, but again, I think it works better for people that are in a better place with their nutrition already. So for those guys that have blood sugar dysregulation and they have cortisol issues, maybe their cortisol's not high enough in the morning, so they don't feel awake enough, to skip breakfast, in my opinion, would not be ideal. So you're always going to have clients that are not going to want to eat first thing. However, for those ones that won't have anything, then I'll tend to give them something like a modified bulletproof coffee, so which is basically black coffee with something like a MCT oil added to it. I'm not a big fan of the butter, just to have something, and even with, say, a small handful of nuts. I don't really know anybody that couldn't handle that for breakfast, and then they're trying to have something a little bit more substantial straight afterwards. But for those guys that aren't taking on anything and are maybe doing the typical 8-16 intermittent fasting, so they're maybe not eating until 12 or 1 p.m, I just think it's going to cause more that blood sugar dysregulation. You're going to be forced to release a lot more of your stress hormones, your adrenalines, which is going to give that kind of roller coaster of blood sugar for the rest of the day, which in my opinion will then probably make you make worse choices, lunch and dinner, because people then just gorge.
Yeah, and even when I've done it before, I'll probably, when you're working as a trainer, you're doing 50 sessions a week. I used to do it sometimes then, but because my body's so stressed already and it's releasing adrenaline, cortisol all day, I would find I get very jittery. Then when I had, like, say I skipped breakfast, had a coffee, I'd be getting mad anxious and getting jittery because like your cortisol's all over the place. So yeah, it's kind of a caveat. It can work, but again, your body needs to be in a good state.
Definitely, yeah. I think for those people that have the blood sugar problems who want to try intermittent fasting, I would recommend they fast towards the evening. So they maybe finish the evening meal by 6 p.m. and then they're fasting for 4, 5, 6 hours before going to bed, and then obviously you have the period of time of sleep. For clients that tend to not want to eat in the morning, if they say they can't face eating food in the morning, that is a very good trick to do, to try and get a client to not eat breakfast for 5 days, for 5 hours before going to bed. So if they go to bed at 10 o'clock, they start eating at 5 p.m. for 5 nights, and they will eat that skeleton that's in this room here for breakfast on a Friday morning.
Yeah, your body just gets used to the meal timings you're going to eat naturally, so you can't really say I'm never hungry.
Exactly.
I used to say that, and then start eating breakfast again. Suddenly, I'm just starving at the same time every day. Like
that's it. You're trying to get your body has a clock system. You circadian rhythm, and you're trying to get that on point. And most people tends to be all over the place, and it's worse than ever now because of the amount of social media, phones, computers that we're using. So trying to reset that for me is probably the number one thing to improve the health marker of a client.
Yeah, and since I actually talked about that, I've switched. I used to eat a lot at night. Not that I don't now, but I even a little bit more throughout the day. Because obviously you have, okay, this is the amount of calories I might need to lose fat. But then when you have that base covered, you go, okay, look, what's a bit more optimal now, and how am I supposed to function better throughout the day? I would eat very late, and then it could interrupt my sleep, and then that is a knock-on effect to the next day. And another point that I've found with clients who have tried that, skipping breakfast, obviously when your blood sugar is low, if you're a bit out of shape, the blood sugar is going to drop down. For my clients that are surrounded by food, natural response is your brain's going to crave this high sugary, high calorie food. And that's something you have to look at as well, isn't it? Because obviously same with your clients in London. What's the food environment like when you're doing this?
Yeah, well that's it. And you said the word optimal. You have to look at what is optimal for the client and what is doable as well. Like what is the family situation? Who does the cooking in the family? So something that I give to all my clients is to find out all of the restaurants and cafes nearby, the options of food and the best options, and I give them a kind of laminated printout to say, right, here's 3 options for breakfast, there and there. Here's 3 lunches, etc., etc. So you can idiot proof it for them, because people will always make the wrong decisions. Like I say, if you're in an office, it's somebody's birthday, there's chocolate, there's cake going on, people are going to have it generally, particularly if they're feeling tired or if they're feeling hungry. However, if you're on it, like you probably find the same thing, Sean. Like if you're training well, you're eating well, and vice versa. Like if you're on it with your food, instantly sessions become better. And it's trying to get the head in the game in that whole aspect. And I think it's always trying to get your client to resonate with what you're trying to do. And that's why I've never, not never, but recently over the past few years, done minimal calorie count with clients, because these guys are already busy enough. I agree with you that they're not too busy to count it, but at the same time I do portion sizes and portion control, and I think certain people love facts and figures. Like I'm wearing a Whoop band now, which is tracks your HRV, your sleep and everything like that. There's no way I would recommend certain clients to have it, because they're already too freaking neurotic, and it would be too much for them, and if the HRV wasn't exactly on point that day, then they couldn't train. So it's a tool, and certain clients will do well with tools. Certain ones you just need to say, this is what you're doing, and then not even think about it. But yeah, like I say, it's always feedback. And I think one thing that I tend to find with a lot of clients, with a lot of trainers or health professionals, is they're not asking the clients enough how they're feeling. Daily, how are you? With my guys, even particularly the men, you can tell straight off how they are by the way they say morning or afternoon as soon as they come in the gym. If they're not feeling great, I tend to take them to the consultation room. Hey, what's up? Have a bit of a chat with them. If you've got a male client, a 50-year-old stressed exec, and he's not feeling it that day, his testosterone levels are going to be lower, and there's loads of studies showing that. Well, I think just even talking about something like that, getting out in the open, so they're in a kind of better headspace, instantly they'll get a better session and better results.
And I've actually changed the structure of my online, the people I deal with online, because I can see the steps, I can see the food, I can see the training, but there's other stuff that I need to know. Like, I need to know how's your hunger, how's your energy, how's your stress. So I've actually changed it. What are some of the feedback markers that you'll ask your clients, or even if someone's listening, what should they be looking out for when they're eating well, they're training?
Yeah. So in terms of what I'm doing with guys, because we had this conversation before off air that pretty much all my clients in London are obviously on Zoom now because I'm in Sydney. So with those guys, for the ones that don't want to wear a Whoop band or Oura-ring, something that's going to maybe track HRV, getting to try and check the resting pulse in the morning. So let's say they have an average resting pulse every day of 60. If they get to a Friday and it's maybe 20% over that, like let's say 70 or 80, then it's probably an indication that they're a bit overtrained or that they're not fully recovered. So that's a very simple marker people can do, that anybody can do. You can obviously check it yourself. Certain clients try and get them to take their blood pressure regularly as well in the morning. Again, looking at the average, if it's way above the average, then there's possibly something going on there. It can be a multitude of factors, obviously, but those two things, and then I try and get into write a performance diary daily, and that might just be 3 things of how you're feeling today out of 10, toiletry habits, don't want to be too crude about that, but just real basic things of how they're doing, how they're feeling, and also direct feedback indicators. For the ones that go more in depth, like what you said, then I'm going to be looking at their data of how they're sleeping a little bit more in depth. And just as an average, it might be through the month, and you're looking at certain things, when are they on the lash, when are they drinking, or they ruined in the gym after that. And even on Zoom and FaceTime, you can see straight away with clients for me anyway, the way they say morning, whatever like that, how they're feeling. And you have to adapt workouts. And I think for a lot of PTs out there, being adaptable in sessions is maybe what they're lacking in a lot of the times. People will write a program and think, I have to stick to this no matter what. And I know I was certainly like that when I was younger. But I think being adaptable, if a client isn't feeling right, has a niggle, whatever like that, adapting the program, maybe doing a 20 to 30 minute chat with them. And I tend to find that, yes, training people gets results, don't get me wrong, but those chats tend to deliver better results because it's that constant feedback.
It's interesting topic, trying to regulate training. I know that, okay, I'll have a general structure that I need to get 3 weights in a week, maybe 2 or 3 cardios, whatever, jiu-jitsu. But I can kind of regulate it. Okay, haven't slept last night, it's probably not the best day to smash a leg session. I'll do a lower intensity cardio. Do you recommend that for people? The same with your nutrition, you still want a flexible approach. Is that something that you'd use with your clients?
Yeah, definitely. So if a client comes in and they're not feeling great for whatever reason, let's say they haven't slept well, or they've got something going on family wise, or they've had a few drinks the night before, I'm not going to do a 10 by 10 back squat program probably with them. I think sometimes it can definitely build mental fortitude with the right clients, and certain clients will push through it well. But again, my average client, your sort of 40, 60-year-old, is smashing them in the gym when they're not feeling 100% the right thing. Probably not. So on those days, again, I might have the chat in the consultation with them, do an extended warm up, do more mobility stuff, do maybe more of a cardiovascular based session. But yeah, I'm going to try and be obviously going back to the program, or doing it later in the week, but it doesn't have to be exactly as you've written down every week, and you should be able to know that by looking at your clients straight off.
Which is why F45 is brilliant, isn't it? You just go in and smash it every day.
I've been a member of it for about 16 years. I actually did a class because randomly two old clients of mine who were accountants set up an F45 in London.
I always look at it like, if you're in business, it's a good business investment. I just don't like it. I've had mates set it up, and I think they always unfollow me on Instagram because I'm always slating, but I understand it from a money perspective, but it's just when you're looking at it from our perspective, which is like ethical health.
This session that I did, I think it had 18 quad-based exercises in it. There's every type of jump squat in there, and again, for most people, it's gonna just brutalize them, But again, people love it. People love group training, and the amount of I train at a place called Revel Training over in New Shore Bay. And again, it's hardcore, but again, people love it now, But it's those places that train like that have a more periodized program, tailored program for group training, which can be done, will be the ones that will continue long term, because people won't be getting injured and they won't be broke.
Yeah, well, I always joke we get the people at F45 when they've done all that. But I used to work at a semi-private, obviously in Dublin, and Louise goes to a good semi-private group training one here where they periodise in. How you feeling? Okay, take it down a touch today. You're still regulating to the extent. Yeah. So with your high stress clients, it's not you're looking at your theory. Okay, people need to meditate. What kind of, everyone's going to be different, but how are you? What stress relieving activities are you getting these people to do? What will they do? What sometimes are they resistant to? How do you find that right balance?
Yeah, I mean, that's a difficult thing. It's finding time for them to do it, and obviously, you'll ask people, what do you do for downtime? What do you do to relax? And people will say they'll sit and watch a movie or whatever like that, and that's fine. And yes, it's not stressful, but it's not particularly restorative. So I'm always going to try and get them to do things which are, if they have a dog, then I'm going to get them to go take the dog for a walk, particularly in nature. Again, you're not stressed, and then you've got some form of endorphins released being with the dog. You've got a little bit of the love hormone going on, being with the pets, being outside in nature, restorative, clean air. That's the one thing that I think everybody can do. You can get into a park. So that's the number one thing I'll tend to get people to do. I like massages for people that can. And again, I've got a good referral system that I take people to, whether that's more of a restorative massage, whether it's more deep tissue or a injury prevention kind of one.
There's one in Soho Louise sent me to, just don't send me to that one.
What's his name?
That's the one where they tell you to take your clothes off for a single time.
It's a Thai one, yeah? That's one. And then not that a sauna as you're going to be thinking of, but sauna therapy as well. So I have a few clients that actually have a sauna at home, an infrared sauna, sitting in there getting a sweat on, which isn't in a stressful type of sweating. Phenomenal. But again, it's trying to get people to do it, and do they have the time? Do they see that as a benefit? But I think walks in nature is the number one thing that everybody sees the benefit of.
I know, if you could have an ideal world, you buy one a Fitbit, a Whoop-Band, and a dog.
Yeah, it's ridiculous because it gets you up in the morning. You're getting outside. And that is something that I love my clients to do, is to get out, get exposed to sunlight in the morning, get the heart rate up, over 100 to 120 beats per minute for a good 20 minutes if they can. It walks perfect for that. I'm in Mosman, so we're not far from Balmoral Beach. I try and get down there each morning, go for even just a 5-minute swim. Again, yes, not everyone has the time to do that, but for these clients, I try and get them to get up 15 minutes earlier. I would prefer them to have, if I'm honest, 15 minutes less sleep to get up and actually be exposed to that daylight first thing in the morning, just because it will, as I was talking about before, that circadian rhythms, it will set it for the rest of the day. I don't know anybody that regrets doing some form of exercise. If you get up in the morning, have that walk with the dog, whatever it is, and then you start work, you'll be in a better frame of mind to, if you just, in my opinion, if you have that extra 15 minutes in bed snoozing. I'm the same, and I'm sure you are, dude. Like, if you ever if you bail out of a workout, you're pissed at yourself for the rest of the day. Do you know what I mean? I know I am. Well, if you do it, even if you don't want to, you might only do a 30-minute session or a deload session. Like, I did one this morning. I wasn't feeling 100% squatting, so I did 50% less sets, but still lifted well, got out of it, done, feel better for it.
What do you do with your clients in London, like during winter, with like seasonal depression, with lack of sunlight? Do you use any of those Lux lights?
So I've recommended, a couple of clients have the Jove ones, spelled Joovv, I think it is. So it's basically red light emitting. Now, but I'll be honest, they just don't use it. They bought it as a sort of gimmick, and they used it at first, felt better, but it's the same with anything, dude, even like the Whoop-Bands and everything like that. I tend to find with my clients, they find it as almost a bit of a novelty at first, but then they just don't stick to it. I still try and get them to get outside and have a walk, but what I try and get them to do is, if they're in the office, or pretty much everyone's just at home at the moment, they tend to not have any excuse to even get out in the garden. And so if they're doing a call, get out in the garden for 10 minutes and take the call, so because I think there's only maybe 5% of my clients who are actually in the office at the moment, because London's back in a full lockdown, unlike here, so I'll get them to do that, so they'll have a walk outside and taking a call, because everyone sits at a desk while they're taking calls or Zoom calls, and a lot of times you don't need to be obviously on a video call. So I'm trying to get people to walk when they're doing it as well, because then they're increasing the step count for the day, and that may sound silly, but I found that to be a really big problem with all my clients, is that normally they have this commute into work, like I said, then they're having to walk from Waterloo Station to the work, which is a good mile, then they're going for business meetings, coffees, they're going up and down the steps, so they're probably doing 10,000 steps before they even think about it. All of a sudden they're at home and they're doing 10 video Zoom conference calls a day. They don't don't move from their ass like once. You know, so I got like the first month of lockdown in March in the UK. My average client steps went from 12,000 down to 1,000 a day. Wow. You know, so but they weren't even thinking about it. You know, and it's obviously sometimes it's that basic stuff that people need reminding of. So for those guys, they have to walk around as much as they can when they're on a call. If they don't, obviously at the moment when it is dark in the morning, once it's light, you have to get out in the garden, even if it's just.
You get some sun, get some looks, even if it's cloudy, will you?
Yeah. So I think I was reading a paper the other day. They reckon that even on a cloudy day, the daylight exposure is about 20 times more powerful than any artificial light.
Oh wow, okay.
So it's not the same as.
So even though it looks a bit gloomy, if you get out there,
it'll still have the same effect. Ideally, you know, you'd be in the sun, and when you're going out, you're trying to not wear sunglasses as well, because you know your eyes should be exposed to that natural light. Wearing sunglasses late in the day, no problem, but first thing in the morning, trying to not. But yeah, even on a gloomy day, it will give you the same benefits. But you want that 20 to 30 minutes ideally if you can. And again, that's just more of it. It's habit forming as well. You know, if you have that as your setting every day, and I like for people to have a walk after the evening meal as well. And that's a great thing to do if it is actually dark in the evening. I mean, it gets dark about 8 o'clock here. It's almost then setting it in the opposite way. You're walking in the dark. Again, if you have a dog, it's handier. But even with the family, you know, everybody will benefit after, because most people's dinner is the biggest meal of the day. They're going to benefit having that walk after they finish, just to reduce what's called your postprandial inflammation, allow your food to digest a little bit better, and it's calming. And again, when you're walking like that with the family or by yourself with the dog, you tend to not be on your phone. Yeah,
it's interesting. So like your habits or your recommendations, although seem simple, like there's like it kills a few birds with one stone, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And you know, it's not exactly sexy, the things I'm recommending, but again, if you get, you know, it's a snowball effect. If you get all those things right together, you're going to get you get the basics right, but you're going to get basic results. And then if you add in training as well, and that's the key thing. If you're just relying on training, you know, even if you train 5 times a week, 5 times a week is, you know, I don't know that many people that train 5 times a week, and it's huge financial investment. It's only like 3% of your total week. So, you know, what are you doing the rest of the time? If you're getting in your basic level steps and then you're getting the basic exposure and all those things, it's more, and I touched on this before when I was saying to you, how are you then feeling? If you're feeling in a good place, again, you're going to get results.
How do you find it hard, knowing what you know, to slowly implement all these little rocks?
Yeah, definitely. So I tend to give clients 2 things to do. So when they come, again, this was back pre-COVID time, when they were coming for a consultation, I would, you know, obviously have the full consult with them, they fill out the form, I'll do the skin fold, body fat measurements, and then I'll generally change their breakfast, as I said before, and then one other thing, and then they come back, well, in 2 weeks time I'll re-measure them, they should have got results, and then you change 2 more things. And that, again, they're only simple things, but at the same time it leaves you a lot of cards to play, and also it makes them think you're a genius, because you're only getting to do 2 simple things. Well, if you ask them to do 10 things in one go, are they going to stick to it? Yeah, certain clients might, like a bodybuilder or whatever like that, or somebody looking for a 12-week transformation. I'm not dealing with those type of people, so they're going to need to change a lot, possibly. But for the average person, 2, so again, 2 every 2 weeks tends to make a big difference.
Now, you touched on the body transformation. I run an online thing. I just call it body transformation, but it's not like I'm going to strip your calories and you're going to end up at 200 by the 12 week. I just package that because that's the way that unfortunately industry's gone. But my thing's like, I'm going to set you up to succeed in the future.
Yeah.
So give me, maybe you probably get clients in after they've done these body transformations. What do you see? What mistakes people make?
Yeah.
And what are the implications then on after that?
So the only clients that I've had come in after doing shows were always females. Who, the issue with females once they do a stage show or whatever like that is they tend to rebound so much worse, meaning that they tend to put on a lot of weight. So a friend of mine, who I won't name, she did a show, she came like second in the WBFF, did really well, looked outstanding, and then she put on, I think it was 12 kilos in 6 days. And what happened with her is, with females, because they have a much more sort of delicate hormonal system, her aldosterone levels, which aldosterone regulates your sodium in your body, was all over the place. And so I think she was recommended to take a really high dosage of licorice root, which is a supplement which is not for most females. And she literally could not shift that weight. I think she may have went up 15 kilos more at one point for about 2 years. So so I did some stuff with her, and I've done it with other people as well. The people I tend to have seen tend to be later down the line who are a little bit smarter with it. But it's trying to regain some form of normality again, and getting firstly a healthier aspect with food, that they don't need to do something crazy to bring it back. But for those guys, they need to improve the gut health, because obviously, you know, when you're doing a show or something like that, it tends to be the same foods, you know, chicken, tuna, broccoli, whatever like that. So reintroducing things like digestive enzymes, making sure that the gut flora is there, maybe a probiotic, but just again trying to normalize and regulate things again. Because that's, if you've done a, you know, I haven't done a steak show, it's never been my bag, but I've got a lot of friends that have, and females that have done it. It's, you know, so out of the realms of normality, you know, the amount of training that they have to do, and again also get them to understand again that I think that, you know, you don't have to do 3 hours of cardio a day just to strip down that last couple of percent. You know, but with people that do shows, you want to be in that sort of, let's say, the danger zone for as minimal time as possible, being dehydrated for as short a time as possible to take down the chances of that huge rebound afterwards.
I get enough abuse from my mates as it is putting on social media. If they ever see me get step on a stage, I would never be able to show my face in Ireland again.
I'm definitely the same way.
And yeah, it's unfortunate. Obviously, then you only see the pics where people are on stage. You don't see the after bit, or
no, that's it.
You kind of don't understand that once you're in that stage, your body's just ready to regain after that.
It is, and you know, guys tend to not get it as bad, and the ones that don't. It's the same as sportsmen. You know, like if you know. I'm friends with a guy called Shane McGuigan, who's a boxing trainer, and he used to train a guy called Carl Frampton a couple of years ago. And you know, I used to like find the ins and outs of what goes on a little bit more, and unbelievable. You know, the changes in weight and stuff like that goes on with boxers in between, and then, you know, Ricky Hatton's possibly, you know, probably the best example of it. You know, getting in ridiculous shape and then completely splurged, while someone like Mayweather stays in great nick year round. It's the same thing, you know. If you're not going to be able to stay stage ready year round, but if you know, if you're 6% on stage and you maybe go up to 12%, you're going to be in a better place chopping and changing between the two, you know. So I think it's the same as anything, you know. Anything drastic, anything severe is probably going to have some sort of similar consequences.
Yeah, even seeing with fighters, like when they're younger, whatever, McGregor could cut to featherweight. Yeah. But he's like, now as you get older and the more times you do it, your body just becomes more resistant.
No, I mean, I remember when Conor went down, what was it for the, I can't remember which fight it was, but it was, I think it was for the, when he won his first title against
Aldo.
Yeah, and he looked like a skeleton on stage, you know. And then the next day he was completely different. He looked like he put on 10% body fat, you know. So and that's the thing, you know. So physique shows are just a way weird and more extreme version of even that. And you know, obviously fighters, or I randomly used to train a jockey a long time ago. Same thing. They've got to be weighed. I trained a lot of rowers, and the difference with something like rowing is they get weighed 2 hours before they compete. You know, so for those guys, it's having to be in shape all the time, rather than if you've got a 24-hour weigh-in beforehand, you can kind of cheat the system a little bit more with fluid retention and fluid shifts.
So even going off what you're saying, when you get next sports people in, do you see the phenomenon where in the first few weeks especially, where the scales might stay the same, but they want to put on muscle, they lose fat, they drop inches, but the scales stay the same?
Yeah. I mean, I think depending what you're doing with them, and a lot of my guys as well, and you will get it with athletes, their weight will stay the same at first, particularly males, because and I said this at the start of the podcast, a lot of the guys actually don't need to necessarily lose weight, but they need to lose body fat, and that's a big thing. You know, you talked about calories before. Is somebody trying to lose weight, or are they trying to lose body fat? You know, the two things are very different, or you should go about them in a very different way. If you're trying to maintain lean muscle mass, then the majority of my guys won't lose weight at first, particularly. But again, tape measurements don't lie, calipers don't lie, but the key thing is some kind of a suit or an outfit or something like that. Again, that doesn't lie, and obviously taking photos as well. And this is the thing, obviously, if you're just getting a client in and you're doing one test with nothing else, you've got no reference point. Now, certain people may not want to have photos done for whatever reason, but you have to have a few different tests to see the benefits of it. So if that happens where the scale isn't going down, then you have, again, another card to play to be like, well, hey, you know, that's fitting you better, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, there's definitely something to, again, not everyone, there's probably ex-athletes, because they're genetically gifted to put on that muscle they probably had before.
Yeah.
Now and again, maybe 1 in 10 are not females all train, it will happen, because you'd be like, you look at them and go, okay, they look pretty athletic, this might happen, and especially if they can train hard enough. in the gym.
Yeah.
Where there's other people, they go, I'm just putting on muscle. No, you're not getting results. There's a fine line, isn't it, between?
Definitely. Like I had the kind of opposite aspect of it with a guy. So I used to train a guy called Alex Coronius, who's a big mutant ex-rugby player. He works at a friend of mine's gym now in London. Top boy, and anyway, he trained with me about 6 years ago, and he definitely had a few allergies to certain things. He overconsumed whey protein and everything like that. He wanted to put on weight, but I also wanted him to get leaner at the same time, reduce inflammation. He had sore elbows, everything like that. And so I took him off whey protein, put him on essential amino acids. And I think in his first week or something or his first 2 weeks, he maybe dropped like 4 kilos in weight. But again, he dropped it like on the calipers, he dropped like something like 3%. So, but he just could not compute. He's like, scales are down, Mark's shit, Mark's the worst trainer I've ever seen in my life, Then he continued a little bit longer, then put on mass. But it's the same thing, people have, this guy's literally 6'6" and he's about 115 kilos at the time anyway. He didn't really need to put on weight, but just it was like his eyes just glazed over as the scale went down, But for him, that's what he needed to do to go down to go up. If that makes sense.
I know there's different. It will depend on the individual. What are kind of the main rocks you look at starting off? Obviously nutrition. What are some of the other markers you look at? And then maybe the lesser known ones, like you said, taking certain foods out they probably overconsume, etc.
Yeah. So again, looking at the food diary first and foremost, trying to get some form of sleep diary as well. Again, a lot of people don't really know what good sleep is or what isn't. But again, if they have an app to track that, then I'll definitely try and get them to look at that.
So a lot of people don't know that they should dream, or like they don't actually know what good sleep is. Nothing.
No, definitely not. And like again, I actually spoke to a friend of mine the other day, and she said she hadn't had a dream in about 10 years.
Wow.
And that's often linked to a deficiency in B vitamins
Really?
and magnesium. And so I got her to go on quite a high dose B vitamin complex and taking magnesium, and she's not loving me for it. The most vivid, crazy dreams.
Absolute movie dreams.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy dreams.
And so things like that. So I'm gonna be for them. I'm gonna be looking at like a physical assessment as well. So I'm not gonna be obviously like saying it to them, but when I'm doing the body, the caliper measurements, I'm going to be looking at the skin. Do they have things like eczema? Do they have maybe skin tags on the back of the neck? Do they have dandruff? All those things can be something like a gluten or a dairy intolerance, which, in my opinion, are the two most common things. They may have the tags on the back of the neck, or sort of very dark skin rolls. You see that some guys can often be like a blood sugar dysregulation. Men losing a lot of sort of hair on the inside of the calf, inside aspect of the calf is really linked to a testosterone deficiency. So it's basically, and fingernails as well, the old white spots on the fingernails can be linked to zinc, a deficiency in zinc and magnesium. But basically just the quality of the skin, the quality of the hair, the eyes, do they have very dark circles? Do they have, asking them about, do they have bleeding gums? That tends to be, I don't know what it's like up here. I think 50% of my clients that I speak to, they get bleeding gums regularly.
So
that's basically what's called gingivitis, which is periodontal disease or gum disease, basically. And that is obviously your first point of contact where you're digesting food is your mouth. You're obviously producing saliva, but if you have that bleeding gums constantly, where you have that gum disease, your mouth is basically constantly going to be inflamed. So you're then not going to produce food in the same way. You're not going to be breaking it down with your salivary amylase. So they need to go and see a dentist for a dental hygienist to get a basic clean, or they might need to use a certain type of toothpaste. And that may sound like a small thing, but again, we eat all day long, and also looking at the breathing patterns as well. So I get certain clients to do certain tests. There's a very good book called The Oxygen Advantage by a guy called Patrick McEwen. And it's all about nasal breathing. So we should, at rest particularly, breathe through our noses, and obviously we eat through our mouths. Most people tend to have that real dysregulation. So I get them to do what's called the BOLT test, which is basically to check the oxygen levels in the body, which would probably be a little bit too...
Let's go. How to do that?
So what you do is you're at rest, and obviously if I was asking you to do now, Sean, you take 3 natural breaths through your nose, in and out. Then on the 3rd breath, you breathe out, and you hold your nose. Okay, so you have to breathe out. Most people breathe in, then hold it, but you have to breathe out fully. You hold your nose, and then once you get the sensation that you need to breathe, you often almost get like a twitching going in your throat, you then start trying to breathe naturally again. It doesn't want to be like a like coming back to it. You want to be able to regulate very naturally, and you tend to find most people get about 8 to 12 seconds, which is an indication that the carbon dioxide levels in the body in relation to the oxygen is completely out of whack. You tend to find very top level athletes can do up to like 60 seconds plus. So I get them to do simple things like that, and then we'll do some nasal breathing work where they literally walk in, same principle, they'll do the 3 breaths, they'll start walking, hold the nose, see how far they can go. And it's just a very simple way to oxygenate the body, but also to improve breathing patterns. most people, you know, and I remember if I ever, well, when I used to play, well, I stopped playing football now, I'd only play like things like five-a-side, soccer.
Yeah.
I play five-a-side again. I always used to find in my mid-20s that my first 10 minutes I'll be gassed and then I'd be completely fine. And that's an indication that your breathing mechanics is completely off. You breathe too much through your chest rather than through your nose.
Yeah, I've noticed, well, I used to have asthma growing up, so my mum and dad always used to, they probably wouldn't know what's going down to, but they know I have asthma when my ears were up beside my shoulders up beside my ears, trying to obviously shallow breathe into my lungs. Yeah. And only later on I'm looking at the importance, so I kind of had to retrain myself to breathe and close my mouth. And
yeah, no, I mean, it sounds silly, but obviously, you know, we can go for, what we reckon, up to a month without eating food. We can go for about a week without having water, a couple of minutes not breathing.
So what do people do when they obviously block for their nose? Because I asked one of my friends, said, do you ever breathe through your nose? He said, nah, I can't breathe through one of them, it's just blocked all the time.
So obviously, as you can probably tell, I've broken my nose once or twice at the time. So my right nostril is slightly blocked. Now, if you have an issue like that, like a structural problem from breaking it, then you only got an option of having an operation on it. Yeah. If it's blocked, you got to look at why is it blocked. So number one reason if it's blocked is probably an allergy, and it's usually linked to dairy allergies. You see that in kids all the time, kids that are snotty all the time.
Yeah, I used to notice drinking milk when I was asthma. Yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, people think obviously for kids, particularly, that milk is the saviour. From you know, I don't get my kids to drink milk. Yeah. So you got to look at that. What is making the nose blocked? Is it an allergy? Is it like an environmental allergy? Is it more than often not? It'll be a food allergy. But also as well, people just need to start practicing. So you can kind of do, and it's all in the Oxygen Advantage book. Like literally practice breathing in through one nostril, out through the other nostril, and just actually practicing doing it. You'll find that your nose will start running like anything. But again, it's just getting used to it. If you're not sure, if you do breathe through your mouth, particularly when you sleep, like if somebody wakes up in the morning, they've got a very dry mouth, it's an indication that they're mouth breathing throughout the night. So you can do something called mouth taping. It sounds a bit kinky and a bit weird. Maybe don't do it if your wife's there, or maybe do. So you just put a layer of tape across the lips, and it obviously keeps the mouth shut, and it's going to oxygenate you more at night time. I mean, there's loads of studies all on it, but it's a for my clients, for their health benefits, I found it a really good thing to do, and just to improve basic level cardiovascular training. Because if you think about it, when you nasal breathe, it decreases your heart rate. And when you're warming up for anything, a squat session, a cardio session, interval session, if your heart rate's already through the roof, you're going to have problems. Well, if your heart rate's starting down at 80 and you can bring it down quicker, then the people always talk about fitness. What is fitness? Basically, the definition of fitness is how quickly can you bring your heart rate when working back down to the resting point. And I tend to find anybody that has the ability to nasal breathe does that way better. And it works really well if you're doing interval training and you're feeling a bit fried, to do nasal breathing only workout, and it becomes almost self-regulated, the intervals. So what I mean by that is, let's say you're on a bike, something simple. You go for 60 seconds, then you very much get the urge to breathe through your mouth. You then just take it down again, take the intensity down, regulate your breathing through your nose, and go again. It's, you know, there's so many books on it, but I found it a very a cool thing to get introduced to.
You need a mouth taping if your partner doesn't shut up as well.
Well, exactly. Exactly. You know, we've got plenty of those. Thankfully, my wife's all right, so I don't have to do that to her yet. But maybe in a couple.
So that's when people maybe doing low intensity cardio with their mouth tapes.
Yeah.
So there's warranted, obviously, like you're saying.
Yeah.
So how would you do a session with that?
So what I do, again, obviously, if you say to a client, I'm going to tape the mouth, they're not going to possibly like that, but I'm just going to ask them to get the mouth closed, and I'll do it with a lot of clients just as a warm-up. So let's say, and it's going to be more simple on something less technical. So something like a bike is going to be easier than obviously running, or a ski erg or something like that. So something like a bike, and they're literally going to be on there. I'm going to take the heart rate up to maybe 150, to the point that they're struggling to maintain it, bring it down, and I'll often use that as just a warm-up routine. Or I've done a full interval session with them before. The problem is that obviously in between you want to have some sort of dialogue with your client. So if you have a client that you don't particularly like, or the dullest person ever, then that's the way to do it. But it's just very simple, like same as everything that I'm talking about. And you can do it yourself. You know, like if you do listen to this podcast, literally walk along the street, maybe when no one's around, breathe out through your nose, hold your nose, see how far you can walk. Then give yourself a 60 seconds break and try and do it again and again. And again, what it's basically doing, because you need a certain amount of carbon dioxide in your body. People think of carbon dioxide as this terrible thing, but you need a certain amount in your body to liberate oxygen to the rest of your body. So for those that don't do that well, they're not going to have that transport system. That's what, blood is transporting oxygen, hemoglobin around the body, and it's going to make that a little bit more efficient.
Do you know, I did a conditioning course with Joel Jameson, just as online one. But like there was one module on breathing. It was breathe through your diaphragm. And interesting enough, he teaches people to be able to do these techniques, breathe through your diaphragm, move through your nose, to bring your heart rate down, which is so important when you think of interval training, because like you have to be able to bring your heart rate down in between the intervals.
Exactly.
It's such a component I would never even thought of before that.
And that's the thing, interval training, high intensity interval training has been totally lost any resemblance of normality anymore. Most training sessions or whatever like that are not high intensity interval training. Exactly as you say, you need to push the intensity high. Might not depend on what you do. You might not necessarily push your heart rate that high. If you and I went to a 100-meter track and we did 100 meters flat out, maybe 12.2 seconds for me, maybe. No, but like if you're going flat out, my heart rate is not going to be excessively high compared to doing 400 meters, but it's the intensity of it. So again, you need to have levels of intensity, but then exactly as you say, you need to have the intensity brought right back down to a 1 out of 10 exertion, and that's what makes it high intensity interval training. Most of your group training classes now, your F45 that you were talking about before, and someone like Joe Wicks, I've got nothing against him at all, but like he talks about high intensity interval training all the time, doing burpees into jump squats. It's not high intensity interval training, it's aerobic capacity training, and this is the thing, like learning the differences between the two. I always relate it to sprinters. Sprinters for me are always in the best nick. You don't see a fat sprinter, do you? You can't, But again, some of the work, if you're training a 100-meter runner, they may be doing a 100-meter interval and they have maybe 12 to 15-minute rest, and they may do 3 sets of that. But again, they have that high threshold motor units going on in the body. They have so many fast twitch muscle fibers going on in the body. So I'm a big fan, even with my clients, with my execs, of I want them all to be able to do that high-end stuff. So I do an energy system seminar myself, and in that seminar I get everyone on an assault bike. And you say the workout, it sounds like nothing, but you have to warm up. You go push the wattage as high as you can, and you're trying to hold it as long as you can. So let's say you hit 1,000 watts on, and then you hold it for 5 seconds. You have 8 attempts to try and beat that. Okay, and so you literally, the session, if you do 8 attempts, is probably going to last maybe 80 seconds max. People are dead, dead, and then they're having about a 5-minute rest in between each set. But again, it's because people aren't used to shifting to that complete high intensity. And it's the same with obviously weights, like obviously you doing a 1 rep max back squat has a much bigger safety risk than doing a 10-second all out in an assault bike. So people are not going to be able to tap into those at first, but you need to obviously get them conditioned up to doing it. But energy system stuff, I've done Joel's courses as well, phenomenal content. I love that side of things, because for me it's a very misunderstood science.
I kind of look back when I was first a trainer, I didn't understand that properly, like about aerobic and
exactly.
having that base. And when I used to play sport, like I'm not running 3k, get out of here. But I'm like, I should have done that in the off season just to build that base.
I mean, I always remember I met Charles Poliquin at remember the FitPro convention? It was in Loughborough. So I did that. I think it was in 2006. So I was about 12 months after being qualified as a PT. And I loved this stuff, and he kept on talking about ATP, and I was like nodding my head along, like I had no idea what he was talking about. Like that's just like, for listeners, just your base level energy in your body. It's what powers the whole of the body. Everything that we do, whether it's cardio, whether it's lactate based stuff, your body's converting into ATP to produce energy. So clients, we've kind of gone off on a tangent there, but clients, getting them to be able to do those type of things, for me, is a huge challenge, because I always like it with exec clients particularly to have something to aim for. So rather than just saying, right, we're going to do 30 seconds on an assault bike or 30 seconds on a rower, I'm looking at what's the output that they're getting. So what wattage are they putting, or it might be they have to do a certain distance in a certain time. There's always some kind of challenge, but also as well for feedback. So people will love, they'll do a full body session and then they'll get them on a prowler and they'll just go, right, do a Tabata, which is most people say that 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. But again, Tabata again is aerobic capacity training, but you've got no idea of how far they're going or anything like that. So always like markers, distances, power up or anything like that, because then you can progress it or periodize it at least.
And obviously your fitness will improve very quick. I heard someone say, like, use that as a marker to show people then like NonScale Victory, where this whole year I joined jiu-jitsu, so I was like, I want to get my aerobic up. So I was doing like low intensity, nearly 4 or 5 days a week. Low intensity. My resting heart rate, I get notified on the Apple Watch, you're below 40 beats per minute, but it's just a good, and I use that with my clients as well, to measure your resting heart rate, and if it's going down, that's obviously brilliant because your heart has less to do. Like your heart's getting stronger.
Yeah, definitely. And jiu-jitsu will definitely have that. I mean, jiu-jitsu is brutal, but yeah, I mean, high intensity interval training is very demanding, and it's very demanding on your adrenal glands, and a lot of people can't recover from it. But exactly as you said, the whole thing is having a cardiovascular base in the first place, which everybody should have. And if you have a client that doesn't have a cardiovascular base, and that doesn't necessarily mean running 10 miles, can they weight train sufficiently? Well, if you do an old school German body comp, full body program, that's you have to have a decent aerobic base to do that. So I want my clients to be able to do the much harder, higher end stuff because again, it's much more of a challenge, and again, you're looking at some sort of goal or desired stat that they're trying to get to, rather than, as in my opinion, most people do, just going through the motions. All right, do some box jumps or push the parallel up and down. Again, they can see what they're trying to beat next time. Ski erg, rower, assault bike, or the bike erg. Those two things I love.
Yeah. So now I've transitioned back intervals. Doing hill sprints.
Yeah.
You got 3 hill sprints, that's it, but I took a few minutes between. Heart rate got up to 180, but I could recover, and just having that base allows you. But I like the periodization between get your aerobic base and where you can go with people, and even obviously if you're training people or you train yourself, you can go, okay, this time I'm going to periodize my fitness, which is probably not talked about as much.
No, definitely not. People will talk about weights and reps and sets and tempo and everything like that, but they won't really talk about it in a more of a fitness interval aspect. I personally find that trainers are a little bit too scared to push clients in an interval side of things, in terms of going from one to the next. I'll tend to do more of a lactic or anaerobic base form, and then it might more be going towards a higher end aerobic base. But intervals are, there's nothing. There's no wrong answer with them, in terms of, it's just, you have to know what are you training for. What is the end goal? What is the actual what stimulus, that's the way I'm looking for, stimulus that you're trying to elicit, and again, something like CrossFit's a great example. Obviously in CrossFit it's multiple disciplines, you have to do gymnastic element, you have to do Olympic lifting, you have to do swimming, biking, but again, that's because they're doing CrossFit. Does it get you in shape? Yeah, it does. It's phenomenal for it, but again, it's a very technical, advanced thing. I would say learn the basics well of getting your aerobic base down. If somebody doesn't have these bits of equipment that I'm talking about, then obviously you can do it running, get your basic level running down, like something like a 5k. What is your time for that? And then if somebody's training for a marathon, then that's maybe more extreme, but let's say a 5k, test it, and then go back, do some shorter intervals. It might be 400 work or 800 work on a track, and then going back to it so you can see the improvements. Yeah,
it's something I've actually changed, just putting, say if I have someone train 3 days a week weights, if they're up to it, I'll get them to do some cardio on the days in between. So never, obviously time going, you'd probably rather someone's active throughout that, but just being able to do that, even myself getting back into running again, when I started off my heart rate would just spike straight away after 2 minutes of running. Now I can run nice steady pace, keep my heart rate low, so it's a good improvement that way. One thing I did get from that course was recovering and breathing through your diaphragm with your hands like bent over, which in football, whatever, you get your hands off your hips, stand up straight, and
they're saying now that
it's actually the better way. It's crazy, isn't it?
I know. Well, that's the thing. I remember the same thing, just getting absolutely slayed. But I think that was more of a psychological thing. You didn't want. You build the teams to be safe.
AFL players actually do that.
They do.
Yeah, they grab the shorts, lean over, and get their breath back.
Yeah, exactly. So we're told wrong in the first place, aren't we?
So, what kind of, other than all this shit, what kind of drives it at the moment with your clients and?
So, obviously, because I'm in Oz at the moment, everything's kind of just running as it is in terms of online Zoom stuff. What the next real focus is, I've done a lot of training retreats over the years. And
I've seen that, look brilliant now.
Yeah, so on Owen Lacey has as well, who has been a mentor of mine for a long time. So we're going to start collaborating and actually doing some retreats together, which is going to be much more focusing on corporate wellness. We have this phenomenal facility in Portugal called the Campus, which is where a lot of football teams like Paris Saint-Germain, which is training recently, it's off the chart. And I was about to actually do my first one there in May, but then COVID happened. So we're really hoping that obviously lockdown is going to lift in the UK and Europe, that we can start doing our first ones in February. So there's going to be a big focus on doing those, and there'll be training ones for people like yourself, trainers who come over, train you twice a day, some seminar in between that, but much more training based, because the whole facility is just set up.
How did your clients respond to that?
They love it. So I think I've done 10 now, and
really?
There's 5 of them I've done all 10, and so really? I'm quite lucky that again they see the benefit of it. But for certain ones of them, it's a nice way to reset things, in terms of they have a full 8 days with me, and obviously we're eating breakfast and lunch together. I have the food prep for them, and I recommend, certain people have carbs or not or whatever like that. So there's guidelines, and then we train twice a day, but the rest of the time is downtime. So it's an active holiday. It's not like a boot camp where I'm screaming at you from 6 in the morning, So for these guys, it's a great reset for them to get the health right, but they all love it because they all kind of know each other in the industry, so they use it as quite a good marketing thing. They're training hard, but they actually have some time to do work. So I'm lucky because when you have clients coming on doing things like that, it's obviously very easy because you know them all, you're not having to assess them, you're not worried about them getting injured. But obviously the goal is to be doing it much more, taking companies in, and where we're looking at the health, doing much more seminar-based work, looking at basically all the things that we talked about here, but doing it in a group environment. And we hope, particularly now, because of obviously COVID and health and everything like that, companies are going to be, if anything, more keen to do it, looking at boosting your immunities to things. And so that's
companies are becoming more receptive to that, I think.
Definitely. I've done quite a few kind of corporate wellness talks, and I think obviously that it's completely gone out the window now, obviously to an extent. But we really hope it will transition. It will continue to go the way it was, because companies completely seen the benefit. A lot of the companies I train, they would have these random guys coming in to do like a talk about.
You got Weight Watchers in, and people like Slimming World.
I mean, they had like these sort of explorers talking about like resilience and stuff like that, and that's great. But I was like, what is that? It doesn't have a huge exactly. And I was like, let's just get all the basics right with it. And we did that, and because all the junior partners, they're the people that maybe can't afford to train, but then they're getting the benefit of all the places to eat. And they're basically getting the same information. And this law firm that I train called Stewart's Law, if you have a healthy law firm, you're going to have less people off work, you're going to higher productivity in it. It sounds cheesy again, but if you have a healthy workforce, a happy workforce, the business is going to do well.
And now the last talk I did with Singapore Airlines, and just like we were saying, the company has to be receptive. I went in, and large majority was like your food environment, whether it's at home or in the workplace, because that's the two biggest places you spend. Right after they set up for a meeting, I put 3 big fucking bowls of chocolate on the table, and we're only talking about blood sugar and energy. I'm like, oh my god, give up.
No, exactly.
But then there's other companies, well, people are copying like Google, where sleep pods and all this colouring books, and they're ahead of the game. So
yeah, exactly. And again, if you do those things, maybe sleep pods and everything like that, not many companies are going to be able to do that. But just getting the basics right. If they have a canteen, trying to get involved with what food they have served in there. The key thing is understanding it. Like going back to our initial point in the first place, getting people to understand why to have these breakfasts. Because if they don't understand, they're not going to do it. And it's the same as anything. Most people unfortunately are just misinformed, and there's more information than ever out there. But every single thing on social media, I still look on Facebook and stuff like that. It's just an argument at the moment. Yeah. It's madness. No wonder people kind of get confused.
But it's good to talk to someone who's still in the game, dealing with face-to-face clients rather just online, just selling cookie cutter stuff. Because one of the reasons I could go all online if I wanted, but I developing skills as a coach, dealing with face-to-face people all day, I can then judge if I'm dealing with online way better.
Definitely, mate. I trained a lot less people in person the past 6 months, obviously, but I still did a few, and I felt rusty. I did, but I always want to have that, because it's not the same. People want social interaction, and again, I'm lucky that my clients are great and that we get along well to an extent, so it makes the Zoom meetings far more enjoyable. Because I think that's the thing, if you don't have to be best friends with your clients, obviously, but if you don't have that base relationship with them, maintaining that, I think it really highlights if you're a good trainer or not, whether you can kind of keep those online clients and keep the sessions fun and everything like that. If you're just doing the same program all the time with limited equipment, burpees, squat jumps, blah 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 blah, quad, you're not going to keep those clients. But once I keep happy, you'll have clients for life, and that's why I like training execs rather than athletes, maybe, because you will have
I know, but even for people listening who may not have a trainer, all the little tips that you've talked about, you don't see that anyway. You don't see that on social media, and all these health tips can make massive improvements to the quality of your life outside eating better, training. There's all this other stuff that you can tick off, and it massively
definitely
improves the quality of life.
I got slated by a few of my mates because I talked about having cold showers in the morning. I like the benefit of having a cold shower because it can increase what's called your brown fat adipose tissue, which has been shown to increase your metabolic rate. My mates were like, "Well, as if a cold shower is going to get you leaner." I'm like, I'm not saying it's going to get you leaner, but it all adds up, and that's the thing. I think there was 10 points that it did, and if you do those 10 points every day, it's 10 big differences of, again, putting you towards that sort of positive mindset rather than a fixed kind of negative one.
I know, even I had Dr. Fergus Conley on last week, and he deals with companies, goes in, And I said, why is it not more important with nutrition and training? He goes, well, these people are going to hit a certain point where that's their biggest limitation, and then they're going to be forced to look at what they're eating and all this lifestyle stuff. Otherwise, they won't be able to progress any further in life. So you'll get to it when you come to it for some people.
Okay.
And where can people find you? I know you do seminars. Well, you were doing them before all this.
Yeah, so I'm kind of launching a new website because my last website was Ugly Diet. So
normally happens.
Yeah. So just the best place to find me is at Mark Roper Health on Instagram, and then there'll be some details in of some seminars. I'm hoping to do a seminar on Sydney in the coming months. But again, it's just trying to get stuff organised, and then once the world opens up again, then these retreats will start happening, and there'll be a lot more information.
They can start running in Sydney now because everything's back to normal.
Well, that's a plan.
We're dying for something to go to.
Exactly.
And Mark Roper on Instagram.
Mark Roper Health.
Yeah, Mark Roper Health.
Yeah.
Excellent. Mark, I want to thank you for coming on today. Could talk for hours, but we'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you very much.
We'll get you on next time you're in Sydney.
Top man.
Boom. There we go. Episode 37 of the Sean McGuinness podcast done. No doubt you enjoyed that episode with Mark as much as I did. Great to sit down with someone who has skin in the game in regards real coaching experience, which is a little bit lost in today's world of people talking on social media and maybe online coaching, where it's actually dealing with people where you carve out real experience and a good reputation, as we could see from Mark, and lots of applicable stuff that you can put into your own fat loss plan to no doubt help you along, because we all suffer or fall victim to kind of similar things. As always, please rate and review, spread the good word, okay? Hopefully help someone like you out in the same situation, and that is the goal, to expose you all to great coaches like Mark, and then talk a little bit myself as well. Coming up to the new year, I will be, or in the new year 2021, if we ever get there, I'll be launching the new intake to my body transformation program. I'm only going to be letting in a small amount of people and limited, I think 10 to 15, but we'll give more details in the coming weeks. If you be interested, email me the word coaching to Sean@livelongperformance.com, or you can send me a message on my Instagram, the word coaching. And yes, I hope you all have a great Monday wherever you are in the world. If you've just finished your steps, or maybe you're going to go out and do some now, maybe you've done it for today. I hope you all have a great rest of the morning, evening, or wherever you are in the world, and I will see you all in episode 38.